It is my pleasure today to be the host of IOH. It is my very first hosting of this venue, this community venue, and I am beyond excited. So thank you all for attending. So we have an interesting lineup today. We have a lot of things that we want to cover, and we have quite an audience, so I'm pretty excited. So as always, before we get into the good stuff, we'll do some announcements, or I guess opening remarks, I should say. So if you guys aren't already aware, I would highly recommend you tuning into the GRT IQ podcast. Nick always produces fantastic content that keeps people up to date with everything that goes on in the graph ecosystem. And the most recent one is episode 58 with Vince from Notified. And it talks all about his journey into the graph ecosystem and becoming an indexer. So I know we have quite a few indexers on the call already who are quite sophisticated, but for any of you who are just getting into the indexing game, it's a highly recommended listen. He talks a lot of, oh, here he is. He just came on stage. Wonderful. It's a highly recommended listen. I really enjoyed hearing Vince's journey into becoming an indexer. It was quite fascinating to kind of see his progression, his entrepreneurial journey into the graph ecosystem and becoming an indexer. And since he's actually here, maybe, I don't know if you want to share a few words about the podcast you did with Nick, Vince?
Hey, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, it was a really awesome time. I got to spend a Saturday with Nick talking about indexing, and it was just really a lot of fun, and I highly suggest if you ever get invited to do the podcast, you definitely do it.
You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. Definitely give it a shot. Thank you so much, Vince. Appreciate that. Wonderful.
Absolutely.
And then amazing. And then the next announcement is a very important announcement, and that is Graph Day is coming up. So it is happening on June the 2nd. It's going to be a very big get together of all the really interesting people in the graph ecosystem. And it's going to be in San Francisco. So if you haven't already got your tickets, please do get your tickets. It's going to be a lot of fun. And there's also a hackathon. It's called the Graph Hack, and that will be happening from the 3rd of June through to the 5th of June. And also, just a reminder, the actual Graph Day is on the 2nd, and the hackathon is the 3rd to the 5th. So yeah, get your tickets, get involved. And without further ado, I will hand to Anna for Repo Watch.
Thank you, Abel. So today for Repo Watch.
I'm very sorry to jump in. Sorry, Anna, but I feel that we must make mention of the Advocates DAO launch, which is a huge deal for the ecosystem. And I see Oliver's on the call. Maybe he can say a few words to that.
Had to unmute myself there for a moment. Thank you, Chris, and for that opportunity as well. Those of you who've been following Twitter closely have seen that we have launched the Graph Advocates DAO, and it's really on the heels on a few months worth of work with the initial cohort of the Advocates program, and we're now ready to officially launching it, and it's super exciting. What the Graph Advocates DAO program is, and what its mission really contains at its core, is the growth of the graph ecosystem. Specifically, it will oversee the ongoing launch of the Graph Advocates program that we've announced 2 months ago, really across the globe. So DAO members will actively participate in reviewing applications, conducting interviews, and that's already begun a few weeks ago. We're in the middle of that process right now. And it will also oversee the community grants process that has been so far conducted by the foundation. So as you know, when you apply for a community grant, it goes to the foundation, and this will now be handled by the DAO as well. This is super exciting. There's a detailed blog post out there that we've shared with some details as well. And those who want to go really deep, you can also look at the Dow Charter that we have developed that explains the entire Dow structure, including its mission in more detail. It contains some 25 pages. It's an on-chain DAO. We have summoned our DAO last week on DAO House using the Moloch V2 platform. And there's a ton of details in it. I don't want to take up too much time. I know you have a busy agenda today, but there's going to be Twitter Space coming up next week, and then we're going to be diving into some of those details, and I hope I see you all there.
Amazing. Fantastic catch there, Chris, and also an amazing announcement there, Oliver. Thank you so much. I've subscribed to the Twitter Space, which I'm very much excited for, and yes, I definitely agree that this is a huge step towards decentralization, and I'm very excited about it. So yeah, thank you, Chris, and thank you, Oliver. So Anna, without further ado, let's get into Repo Watch.
Thank you, Abo. I just want to say one more thing, Oliver. Please do not put the Twitter Space on the same time as IOH, so we can join as well. And now to Repo Watch. So in terms of major blockchain clients, for Geth, we haven't had any new releases. We have a new release, version 1.10.17. For Aragon, no new releases. Last one has been version 2022-03-02 beta. Open Ethereum, we have a new release, version 3.3.5. Streaming fast Geth, no new releases. The last one has been Polygon version 0.2.14, which is a hotfix. Streaming fast ETH, we have a new release, version 0.10.0 RC4. For streaming fast Near, no new releases. Last one has been version 0.3.0. For streaming fast Solana, there hasn't been any official releases announced yet, but we've added the repo to our watch list. And moving on to GraphStack, today we have a new release of GraphNode, version 0.26.0. However, I will not be covering it because we will cover it later on in this episode. And then for Indexer Service and Agent, we haven't had any new releases, but the last one has been version 0.19.0, and that was a pre-release. And on the Indexer Service and Agent, I'd like to bring to your attention issue 398, which Ford submitted, and improves error messages when using incorrect rule key on Indexer CLI. So it tells you more details about the function and a better error messaging. Before I hand over to Protocol Watch, has anyone had any experiences with any of these releases that would like to share, or are there any questions that we can help you with at this time?
Latest Aragon running fine, having 2 nodes, indexing on production with that one, so I can confirm that is looking good.
Awesome, thank you for that. Cyphera, I hope I said your name right. Can you confirm, please?
Yeah, correct. It's just a nickname. My name is Nicholas, but yes, Cyphera.
Nicholas, okay. Awesome. Anyone else?
Running that Geth node upgrade for a few days now on an archive node. No issues so far.
So that's version 1.10.17, yeah?
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Jim. Okay. In that case, I will hand over back to Abo.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Good news to hear that everything's running smoothly. So I'm going to pause briefly before we go into Protocol Watch to let you know that we have a POAP that we will be, we have a secret word so that you can claim a POAP. But as always, we'll mention that towards the end. So stay tuned for that. Make sure you have the app ready on your phone when we announce it towards the end. Fantastic. So ready now for Chris to bring us into Protocol Watch.
Thanks, 𝗨𝗶𝗀𝗀. Sadly, we don't have Juan with us today, so you'll have to do with my comments. On the contracts repo, two pretty minor PRs got merged, although as much as I say they're minor, that's minor for us. They're a pretty big deal for the development team. And Pablo from Edge and Node is responsible for those, and he's really been killing it on the contracts repo. But that's PR 554 and 555. Both of them make changes to the way block mining works in testing, and yeah, just improves the developer experience around the contracts repo. In the last week, we had a critical failure on the network that related to the core network subgraph failing. Thankfully, Juan was around and jumped into action, so that created minimal real downtime. But essentially what happened was the subgraph availability oracle posted a data structure onto the chain that kind of wasn't compliant, and the subgraph attempted to parse that, and a non-null assertion failed, and so the subgraph failed. Thankfully, that's been fixed, and of course the gateways are running the latest deployments of those subgraphs across mainnet and testnet. And all of the indexer, or at least our indexer software, will default over to the gateways in the case of a locally failing network subgraph. But the latest deployment hashes, which fix those issues, are in the agenda. I will drop those into the stage chat as well for convenience. And yeah, just in case it wasn't clear, for both mainnet and testnet deployments, you're going to want to go into your configuration for indexer agent and indexer service and update the deployment hash that you pass into those components. I guess it's also worth saying that you could wait until these hashes are published in the networks.md document, but yeah, these are the updated copies, and they have passed the issue on the chain successfully. So I don't imagine that there will be more updates, and you can probably use them. On to forum governance. A number of GIPs that had previously been approved and ratified have been implemented and rolled out on the production deployment of the protocol. Specifically, that is GIP 16 and GIP 15. Both of these, I would say, are not hugely consequential GIPs, but rather kind of tighten the parameters of the system and just remove increase efficiency or otherwise remove attack vectors and things like that. There has been progress on GIP 24, which is with regard to query versioning. We did cover some of this in a recent IOH where we explored data edge with Zach. Query versioning would depend on data edge. I'd encourage you to read that thread. It's kind of adding versioning into the stack is obviously an important way for us to maintain backwards compatibility and generally create the space to be able to upgrade the protocol and the shapes of queries over time. So have a look at that. On the forum research side, there is GIP 26, which, is a pretty great idea around introducing a decaying curation tax, which would effectively mean after some period, the tax that would be subject, that a curator would be subject to upon withdrawal would effectively decay to zero. And obviously the original point of the curation tax was to discourage, extraneous subgraph upgrades, because that obviously negatively affects indexers. But after some time has passed, that tax is really just a hindrance. So this is a mechanism to improve that. And then something else that actually was recently implemented was GIP 17, which allows batching calls against the staking contract by adding multi-call support. This is a huge unlock for work on Indexer Agent. It effectively allows us to create arbitrary batches of allocation opens, closes, and kind of just mix and match everything together. So there are pretty significant gas savings that we can get out of that. There are some prerequisites to getting that into Indexer Agent and functional, and one of them that we've spoken about in Indexer office hours before is the action queue, which Ford from Edge and Node has been working on. But you can imagine that once we have all of the actions that an indexer or the operator of an indexer might want to take flowing through this queue, that presents like the ideal opportunity to arbitrarily batch those things together. And I think that covers it for Protocol Watch. Does anyone have any questions about any of those things? Okay. Well, in that case, back to you, Abel.
Thank you so much. Great. Well, we are moving on to the next section, and it is my pleasure to invite two guests to the show, to the episode. We have 𝗨𝗂𝗧𝗂 and 𝗨𝘀𝗂𝗳𝗂𝗧. I hope I'm pronouncing both names correctly. They're both from Edge and Node, and they are going to talk to us about a new release, Graph Node. And I believe the release is 0.260, if I'm not mistaken. And so, yeah, I'm very excited to bring them on. So thank you both for coming on.
Thanks for receiving us. But yeah, it's like it's a very big release. We've been a while without doing a stable one. And yeah, I recommend everyone taking a look at the release notes. It's a lot of stuff. I'm going to post in the stage chat if no one has. Yeah. But yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know if 𝗨𝗂𝗂𝗳𝗂𝗧𝗂 wants to say something as well, but yeah.
Hey there, guys. Thanks for having us. Yeah, no, I didn't want to say anything specifically. Yeah, but yeah, new release is out.
Fantastic. Thank you both. So I have a few questions about the release, or just things that I'd love to maybe dive a bit deeper into. So maybe we could start there. So the first one is gas metering. I think this is quite interesting. And I would love to maybe dive a bit deeper into it, right? So my understanding is that this makes costing far more deterministic and also makes failure far more deterministic. So if you could elaborate on this and maybe enlighten the community on this particular part of the release, that'd be great. And this is for both of you. Anyone who wants to take this, feel free.
Honestly, I'm not fully aware of all the details of it because Leo was the one that did it. I can definitely bring posts after the index of stars here on the chat, maybe even in the middle of it. But what I know is now there's an environment variable you can set if a subgraph reaches that limit, and yeah, but it shouldn't be necessary. Like I think the values that Leo put there, they should handle everything that everyone does at the current moment. So yeah, but I definitely can bring more details later. Sorry.
No worries. That was a good introduction. Thank you so much. Another thing I wanted to talk about is the support for Solidity custom errors. Maybe either one of you could elaborate on that. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, it happens that for a long time we didn't support mappings to declare their support for custom Solidity errors, only like the default language errors. And it was quite shocking that we didn't implement that. So it came as an internal request that we should add support for it. And honestly, it was just a matter of updating one of our dependencies, and we got that. not really any work at all. It was just updating some old dependencies. But now the thing is that we can subgraph developers can use like custom errors from Solidity contracts and interact with them, and that wasn't possible before that.
Fantastic. I think I can speak for most developers out there that without kind of knowing what the error is, without finding out what the error is could be quite annoying, right? Like actually knowing exactly what the error is and being able to pinpoint that is super important. So yeah, I'm glad you guys implemented that. Another thing that I wanted to discuss is the debug fork tool. So if any of you have additional context on that, that'd be fantastic.
This tool is basically a tool that LangChain has done, which is very, very useful, especially for subgraph developers, but like indexers can use that as well. It basically makes you, like currently we have I forgot the name of the feature, the grafting. So basically we had the grafting, which you could start a subgraph from a certain point in time, and like you didn't have to index the whole up until that block. And now with debug forking, you can basically, instead of grafting, which is a database operation, basically there's a whole copy on Postgres to create a new subgraph. With the debug forking, basically you can make your graph node point to like a remote, like for example, the hosted service, and consume the data from that subgraph up until that block. So you can perhaps only debug the last block which failed, instead of having to redeploy and go through the whole process. Basically, it allows you to get data from an external source in a subgraph locally.
Fantastic. And keeping in theme with making the lives of developers easier, and also perhaps maybe indexers too, automatically removing unused deployments makes the lives of indexers easier. So I'd love for you to elaborate on how that is for the community here, because obviously this is super relevant for everyone, or the indexers in the crowd.
Yeah.
One thing though, just mentioning before. Oh no, you can. I'm just going to mention that I posted a documentation on the debug forking, but yeah, you can talk about it.
Oh right, yeah, I was going to talk about the removing unused deployments. Yeah, it's just that now we have a rule that indexers can set an environment variable to determine for how long they want to keep unused subgraphs, and after that deadline, graph node will remove that subgraph automatically. So some maintenance task is no longer needed if you set this right. So yep. And yeah, subgraph isn't used if it's not assigned. It's not on any append in our current version, and it's not assigned to any node. So yeah, will help like doing the house cleaning more easily.
Hey Thiago, you should be shilling those new Graphman commands.
Yeah, oh, there are a joy to write, because everything in GraphNode is so deep. But actually, writing Graphman commands are the fun part of working with GraphNode. And yeah, they are. All we hope for is that they are useful for indexers. So we are always listening and we are always welcome for feedback on how we can make the indexer experience more productive, or how can we ease the lives of anyone who needs to handle lots of subgraphs. And yeah, there are more to come. Definitely.
That is exciting to hear, and this is definitely the best venue to discuss those improvements to the indexer experience, seeing that everyone, most people here are in tune with the indexer community. So sticking with the indexer community and things to improve the indexer experience, Maybe you could talk a bit about like fixing full text search, space handling. That's also another very interesting update that I wanted to pull our attention to. And again, it's for either of you to double tap into.
Yeah, I wasn't really involved on that, but yeah, I don't know much about this.
Let me just double check the PR, because I think it was Filippo who did it. Sorry, it's like more than, I don't know, 30 PR. I remember going over 200 commits for this new release to create the release notes, and I'm just gonna double check here. But yeah, if there's other features you would like to talk about, I can search while that.
Yeah, that sounds like a good use of time. So I'll move on to the next one, and then we can maybe revisit that later down the road. So another one that I think is a big deal for indexers is to allow placing new deployments onto several. Allow placing new developments onto one of several shards. This is obviously a big deal for indexers. So keen to hear how this is going to make the lives of indexers much easier.
Yeah, I'm not
sorry. Which one?
About placing new deployments into one of several shards. I'm not sure how this rolls out, because I thought it was like we already had this type of feature before, because we, at least on hosted service, we have so many shards and subgraphs are scattered across them. Yeah, I'm not sure how the indexers use this before this new feature, but yeah. Anyways, I wasn't involved on this task, so I don't know much about it.
I think the feature like is this one, which basically allows you to, I'm gonna post on the stage chat an example, but basically you can do something like this now on your GraphNode.toml, and yeah, it should allow more flexibility for indexers to like shard better basically make the deployment rules more flexible on the configuration file. So yeah. This is the PR that did it from David.
Perfect. I love it. The more resources in the stage chat, I think the better, because it means that anyone who's interested in these particular pieces can always go into the stage chat and do the extra digging. Fantastic. I have a couple of more that I'd love to kind of go through. The next one is GraphQL validations. That's, I think, most interesting to queries. But yeah, curious to kind of double tap on that and maybe chat. If either of you can chat to that, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah. This one is a really great addition to GraphNode, because we always allowed people to send GraphQL queries, and lots of validations were doing on what we expect the data to be, and what it was a very narrow set of limitations that we have baked ourselves. But after the guild stepped in and helped us with all their GraphQL expertise, they saw that we need to ramp up our GraphQL validation, because we're allowing lots of invalid GraphQL to come in. Nothing really critical, just that we would accept before that we would accept GraphQL queries that would inevitably result into errors or on the server side, and now we can enforce those rules before the query processing even starts. So yeah, it's all merit of the guild team for helping us with that. So yeah, we are more confident that we accept very formal subset of GraphQL rules, and we will validate way better than we did before. So lots of new errors coming up from depending on the subgraph queries. Users might see some new errors there, but we did some work to informing them of possible errors coming from recurrent queries. At least on hosted service, we reach out for those some most important subgraphs and told them, hey, from now on, this query that you're using is going to return an error. You should update your GraphQL to be more correct in that sense. So yeah, new errors are coming in from invalid queries that weren't considered invalid before. So
I think that's one of the benefits of working in an organization like the Graph, where you have several core development teams who are kind of helping each other. So yeah, shout out to the guild for helping you out there. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and just to point out that this feature can be toggled on and off. You can run an indexing node without a query node. Sorry, you can run a query node without those validations. So you can turn them on and off to see the differences and report back to your users if there are any errors, or maybe roll another version, the new version of GraphNode, but without those validations. I think they're opt-in, and you can opt out via using an environment variable, or the opposite. I'm not entirely sure, but the point is it can be toggled on and off.
Fantastic. And I have one more before I flip it to you guys to maybe highlight interesting parts of the release that you want to share with the community, and then maybe we can move on to Q&A. So the final one that I have on this side is to add special treatment for immutable entities. I thought that was really interesting for indexing performance. Indexing performance. And so I'm curious to kind of maybe double tap into that and talk a bit about that.
That's a shout out to David, to Luther, who rolled this. I've been hearing his saying about this immutable entities for quite a long time, and we're finally shipping this. The thing is that for entities that we are certain that won't change over time, we won't get updates on its properties. You can set that and on your schema, and that entity will receive a special treatment inside GraphNode that will lead to better performance when writing and reading. Since now we can assume that entity will be immutable, so it will turn on lots of optimizations on the query build, on the SQL query generation and execution time. So yeah, that's great news.
It's always good to ship something that you've been thinking and speaking about for a while. So that's really good news there. Cool. Well, I'll flip it back to you guys. I know you guys have been working quite hard to get this release out, and I'm sure there's particular areas that you'd like to perhaps maybe highlight in this very valued, venue, right? Think about this venue. There's tons of people here who are indexers and are very keen to hear about this release. So if you have any particular areas that you'd like to point our attention, then the time is now. So yeah, feel free to take the stage on that front.
Well, I think that the most important ask that we might have is that whenever indexers think of cool new features that would help them on a daily basis and that will improve the overall indexer experience, please feel free to reach out for Eva or me or anyone from the EdgeNode team at any time. We are always interested in listening and in understanding and learning how can we improve not only the performance part of GraphNode, but also the experience of indexers and all of its users. So yeah, and thanks for all the collaboration that we've received over the past months. And we already have received lots of nice ideas that we are proud to turn into features. And we plan to still keep doing this for as long as we can. So this is the most awesome part of the job, to finally to interact with our end users and to get such great feedback from every one of you. So yeah, thanks.
I would like to just say a couple of things. So about the full text fix of full text search space handling, basically that there was a syntax error that we couldn't handle. It was like a very simple query that didn't work. Not Filippo, we have both on our team. He solved the issue. And also just to complement on what Thiago just said about the release, now we intend on doing those more regularly. So you guys should expect at least, I think, once every couple of months or once a month. I'm not sure the cadence correctly, but yeah, it shouldn't, because I think from 0.25 to 0.26, it was a while because we were fixing a couple of things on 25. So yeah, we want to release those more frequently. And as Thiago mentioned, any feedback is very, very welcome. And yeah, very glad to talk about the release here. Thanks.
Fantastic. That's really exciting. It's always gratifying to ship something and then get feedback and then continuously iterate. You know, that feedback loop is most certainly gratifying to get spinning. So yeah, this venue is open and welcome to you guys to continue kind of that feedback mechanism to improve GraphNode. So yeah, thank you both for being here. It's my absolute pleasure to speak with you both. Fantastic. Well, I'm going to open it up to questions. I'm sure many people in the stage and also in the audience have questions. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to open it up to everyone on the stage at present to maybe unmute their mic and ask questions. And then once we've done a couple of questions on stage, then if anyone in the audience has any questions, feel free to raise your hand and we'll bring you on stage and you can ask your question. So without further ado, anyone on stage, if you have any questions, fire away.
Probably
Hello.
tangential to this. Sorry, Chris. I'll just quickly add something here, if that's okay. I know it's slightly tangential to this topic, but my understanding from trying to catch up this morning is that the testnet network is currently not operational, and I assume that's where most people are looking to deploy version 26 in order to, be confident that it can be used in production. Does anybody know, as this is open to anybody, what the situation is with the testnet and what we need to do in order to resolve issues with the testnet?
Yeah, I'm not into how the testnet works at all. I've been focusing exclusively on GraphNode and GraphCLI and GraphTS, but yeah, unfortunately, the network is something that I really don't have much information about. But yeah, maybe we can get some feedback from the rest of the team and get back to you in the chat. So,
Payne, do you have any idea what the situation is?
He might have stepped away. I was just going to say, so the testnet is currently, not operational because of the subgraph issue that I described earlier in the call. So we do have a fixed subgraph, but I don't think the gateway is running that yet. So that's the kind of immediate issue, which should be a fairly trivial fix. But beyond that, I certainly don't want to scoop him, but I know that Payne is spearheading an initiative to make the testnet more valuable for all of us. So watch this space.
That's great to hear. Thanks, Chris.
My pleasure. I will take that opportunity to ask my question.
Feel free.
So yeah, I see in the release notes that there are a number of new GraphMan commands, which is awesome. The one in particular that I want to ask about is the analyze command, which reads, add the analyze command for analyzing a PostgreSQL table, which can improve performance. Yep. I'd love to learn more about what that analysis kind of surfaces to the user.
Yeah. Well, to the graph, you mean to the user? You mean like the GraphMan user?
The indexer.
The indexer. Well, the command is really just a really simple command. It just runs the SQL analyze table, and what it does internally in Postgres is that the analyze command it reads all the statistics table that Postgres gathers for a given table, given relation. And I'm not a Postgres query planning expert, but all I know is that after you run an analyze command after a table that has been modified several times, then you get new statistics that will eventually help the Postgres query planner to make best uses of its indexes and to better locate your data. And the end result is that you get more performant queries, because Postgres now knows a lot more about your tables, so it can make more efficient query plans. So it's a very healthy habit to run analyze over critical tables. And yeah, the main purpose of analyzing a table is getting better query plans that will result in more performatic queries.
Thank you. And maybe if I could just follow up there, if I understood correctly, running analyze, will obviously return some information to the operator, and that's helpful in and of itself. But did I understand correctly that running analyze will also optimize the query plan that Postgres uses from that point forward?
Yeah, ideally, yes. If that table have never been analyzed before, it will be a huge improvement. And depending on how much the table was updated, by updates I mean insertions, and in the case of GraphNode, it's only insertions. It will provide new statistics to the query planner. So if you run like twice in a row, the second time won't give as much new metadata for Postgres to improve its query planners. Yeah, I think that the current state of this graphing command, it doesn't output any information that Postgres would normally output to a direct SQL command. It seems like the libraries that we use for interacting with Postgres, they really don't give us access to this Postgres standard output, if that makes any sense. And we couldn't print that same information. We couldn't ship that same information back to the user. But we can tell if the analyze command has failed or not. And at least this is the feedback that we can provide back to the user. But even though if there's not standard, even though that's not information about the analyze command itself that's printed after its execution, the analyze command is still runs as normal, and the Postgres statistics tables for that relation entity table will get updated as usual. So, yep.
So
Thanks.
as I understand, the analyze command is something different still from the indexes that are possible to create. And I was if that's correct, I was wondering okay, how can we know which indexes are useful to create?
Yeah, that's something that we do on a daily basis in the hosted service. Unfortunately, there is no deterministic way to know exactly which indexes are going to be the best index for a given query situation. It really depends on the query itself and on the volume of queries that of the same shape, let's say that way, that arrive to the indexer. And only by monitoring the longest queries, the queries that take more time, or any Postgres tooling that lets you comprehend what are your most expensive queries, will give the answers to what types of indexes you should have for that given table. We receive lots of subgraphs that are Uniswap-like subgraphs, and we are used to creating those same indexes over and over because they always use the same types, and the queries are really similar. For those cases that we already know, we already have the create index command on ready to be executed. So, but for it's not there's not a silver bullet indexing strategy that's we can use. It would be great if we had one of those, but in practice, what we do is to really look at your database, look what are your most expensive and more recurrent queries are, look at the query plan for those queries, and see if there can be any type of optimization. See if there are any sequential scans, any indexes that are not being used, but maybe a composite index could be more suitable for that query. And it's always about trade-offs, because indices will increase your query speed, but will decrease your indexing speed, because you have to update index on insertions. And yeah, it's not like that we can create all possible indexes and hope for the best. It's really it's a more like in-depth analysis of each scenario, of each situation. And yeah, sometimes at hosted service we see some spikes in CPU or in memory coming from the database, and when we dig into inspect what's going on, we notice that, hey, this is there are lots of queries arriving from a subgraph that hasn't been properly indexed yet, and but we only know after it has been like a spike in resource consumption. So the moment we step in and create an index for it, we can we see that the utilization going down. And the one good thing, I'm not sure if it's on that release yet, we have those Graphman index create commands that are at least helpful for, you don't need to step into your database shell to create those indexes. You can just point entity names and the field names, and it will create an index for you. And yeah, we plan on improving the experience of dealing with indices a lot more, but unfortunately that's the $1 million question. How can I create the perfect indexes for all my subgraphs? And yeah, the only answer I have for is we really need to understand and evaluate what queries do you want index to be optimized, in which queries do you want to have indexes to optimize it, and how much storage and performance those indices are going to cost you. So that's the main strategy that we have been using in hosted service.
And is that anywhere documented? Because it sounds very complex, and for me this is a very concrete question. I see I'm serving a BSC subgraph, and top pairs and the top tokens are super slow query. My guess is going to be very intensive on the database, but I don't know where to start. And it's quite a coincidence that I see now index create command popping up in the new release. Yeah, would be super interesting to try optimize, but I still have no idea where to start, basically.
Yeah, I think that we should have some guides around that, and since Uniswap like subgraphs are so common in the wild, I think that they maybe we could write a blog post around this matter, so just to orient how to look into a bad query plan, and how could we make it more efficient by writing the correct index for that situation. I think we can. Yeah, I agree with you. It's something. It's really complex, and it varies depending on the case by case. And there is no one index creation strategy that fits all cases. But I think that we're depending on we can start to see some patterns on subgraphs and queries, and I think there are numerous enough that we might give it a try explaining and documenting, and so we can share the knowledge that we've gathered maintaining the hosted service with all the indexer community. So I think that's doable, but I don't think we have anything like that yet. But I think it would be an awesome thing to write about and to discuss, and so everyone can be on the same page on how to deal with wild queries, and how do we use the right index for depending on the type of the situation. It's really open questions, and they demand more like a refinement on how we make decisions around the database, and how we should inspect the query. What should we look for on bad queries? Let's say that way. That can be, and how do we learn what can be improved over them? But yeah, I agree that it should be documented, and maybe, I don't know, I'll bring the idea up to the guys, to the rest of our team. Maybe we can come up with something more explanatory on that side, on that sense.
Yeah, I think
Go ahead, Cohen.
Yeah, I think even if you would already document the steps that you take when you try to achieve these, even I understand there is no golden bullet or anything like that, or silver bullet. But if you could already document the steps that you take and the information that you try to look for in terms of taking action, just documenting that process, sort of getting that from the people's mind who have been doing it into a document or into an article, I think that already would be beneficial.
Yeah.
It might not yet be perfect, and it might need still a lot of interpretation on who tries to use it, but it's already, I think it already would be a very significant step forward.
Yeah.
And potentially, like you said, there are several subgraphs or share a common ancestor, so to say, and there's things that come back. So if certain indexes are coming back, it would be useful to include these as examples for to say, okay, in this type of subgraph, this index often helps, and this is why, or this is what we saw, and that is why it is helping. Sort of almost document that as a use case example.
Yeah, I know it's not what I wanted to share something on that regard. It's not an answer to how do we proper index a specific case, but we do have some utilities to work with account-like entities and account-like subgraphs that internally GraphNode deals differently, because it knows are some like those Uniswap similar subgraphs similar to Uniswap and exchanges, is that you can toggle the account-like of an entity. So you're telling GraphNode, hey, GraphNode, this entity here is of an account-like entity, and GraphNode understands how to optimize some of queries for that specifically. And yeah, it happens so that on a hosted service, we discovered that a new subgraph was deployed, and it should have this account-like toggle over it. So it's over some entities for the subgraph, but it might help a little. It doesn't solve the problem, or it doesn't answer the question on how to strategically create indexes. But yeah, at least it helps for those. It's a case of a common pattern that we see a lot, are those account-like entities. It's from previous releases. I guess it's Graphman stats account-like, and then you pass the entity and the subgraph and the entity name, so you can set that toggle over that entity, and then it will be optimized all the way through indexing and querying from GraphNode. So, but yeah, it's just a side note on that matter.
If I may just hop in here and say the secret word for the POAP. Everyone get your phone out and go to the POAP app and type in indexing 54. That is indexing 54, all lowercase, INDEXING 54, and then plug that into the app, and then that's how you can get the POAP. So as you guys are doing that, Vince mentioned in the chat that he would like to know a bit more about what is it that you wanted to know more? Graphman Analyze, and where in an indexer's ops routine could it be useful? I'm not sure if we've covered that yet, but he mentioned he can't be on his mic, so he'd like to learn more about that. And I know people have been commenting on this in the chat, but yeah, if anyone wants to take that, feel free.
I feel like we've covered some of that. You know that running Graphman Analyze is effectively like running Analyze in the SQL console, and
exactly.
could impact the query planner. But yeah, I to me the part that was more interesting was the Graphman stats account-like optimization, and it's worth saying Eva has shared some like mini temporary docs that explain how to enable that optimization. And this is actually the first I'm hearing of this optimization. So yeah, awesome to have that shared here. I wanted to just in response to what Koen was saying, say a few things. I guess the first is that I don't think that there is anything about the kind of database indices problem that is like super specific to subgraphs here. Any number of the like guides or like open tutorials and documentations out there that, lay out how one would approach optimizing for a specific SQL query type are completely applicable in this instance. And it probably starts with enabling the PostgreSQL slow query log to surface the queries that are really, inefficient, and then looking at how the query planner deals with executing that query. And then something else that's worth saying is there are actually extensions for Postgres that allow you to create hypothetical indexes or indices. So you can actually say, okay, well, if I had this index, and it was defined like this, how would that hypothetically change the query plan? So you can, kind of quantitatively gauge that effect without actually building the whole index.
That's awesome. It looks like a linter for performance, to index creation and performance. Yeah, it sounds really nice.
Amazing. I'm going to take this opportunity just at the top of the hour to wrap up this call. Just want to say a massive thank you to Thiago and Eva. Both of you have been incredibly insightful in sharing everything that is to do with this release. I hope that everyone in the audience found it insightful. I certainly learned a few things. I hope everyone did too. And that about wraps it up. Again, thank you to Eva and Thiago. Any final things you guys want to say before we wrap up, Eva and Thiago?
Actually, just appreciate that the invite. Hope to be present on every index office hours, and don't know why I didn't do it before. Thanks for having us.
Yes, I was having trouble to mute. But yeah, thank you as well. I don't want to take more time. I think we're probably, we took all the time in the index office hours. But yeah, thank you so much for having us.
It's our absolute pleasure. There you have it. I look forward to seeing you both in future index office hours. Thank you to everyone on the stage who contributed. Thank you to all of you in the audience who listened. It's been my absolute pleasure to host today's Index Office Hours. And without further ado, I bid you farewell. Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everyone. See you next week.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye-bye.